It was supposed to be an unremarkable evening, the kind you forget by the next day. Sarah, my wife, had asked me to help host her company's quarterly gathering. This time not at some posh restaurant or rooftop lounge, but right at our home. Her manager had floated the idea of a more intimate setting, something that felt warmer, more personal. Our place, with its open backyard, flickering fire pit, and cozy dining space, fit the bill perfectly. I wasn't particularly thrilled about playing host to a crowd of corporate strangers, most of whom I barely knew and some I'd never met at all. But when Sarah smiled and said, "I want them to meet the man I'm proud to come home to," I couldn't say no. That kind of sentiment doesn't need convincing. The whole afternoon blurred into a whirlwind of preparation. I set up the patio heaters, arranged the firewood, strung warm-toned lights above the lawn, and stocked the bar with everything from craft beer to aged whiskey. Sarah was juggling the catering details like a pro, pausing occasionally to check how everything looked. The house felt like it was humming with promise. Jazz flowed softly from the speakers, and by the time the first guests arrived around 6:30, everything had settled into place like pieces in a well-designed painting. People trickled in with smiles, polished shoes, and polite nods. I played my part, offering drinks, shaking hands, laughing at anecdotes I didn't quite care about. Everyone knew me as Sarah's husband. That introduction came over and over again, but I didn't mind. If that's what tonight was about, so be it. I watched her move gracefully from one conversation to the next, admired by her colleagues. It made me proud. She was in her element. And then Jason arrived. He didn't ring the doorbell or knock. He just strolled in through the open patio doors like the space belonged to him. I'd seen him before, twice maybe. Sales department. Mid-30s. Always the loudest voice in any room. His suit was sharp, probably designer. His watch looked like it could pay someone's rent. He was the kind of man who had charm, but used it like a weapon. The kind who complimented you with one hand and took your dignity with the other. He greeted Sarah with a hug that lingered just a few seconds too long. It wasn't overt, but just long enough to register. She pulled away, a half step back, and turned to me. Asterisk, you remember my husband, right? This is Andrew. Asterisk, Jason gave me that infuriating smile, the kind that said he knew something I didn't. Ah, yes, the elusive Andrew, he said, as if I were a myth or rumor. I forced a smile, nodded once. No reason to start anything. Not yet. The evening wore on, filled with bursts of laughter, clinking glasses, and harmless office banter. Jason, however, was getting louder, more animated with each drink he poured. He monopolized conversations, interrupted people mid-sentence, and kept referring to Sarah as the star of the team in a tone that made me grit my teeth. It wasn't admiration. It was ownership, or worse, desire dressed as admiration. Then came the moment that ripped the night in half. It was nearing 9 p.m. Most of the guests had gathered in the living room. Some stood in clusters. Others sank into the couches, drinks in hand. Jason, now on his fifth or maybe sixth glass of whiskey, was mid-conversation when he suddenly raised his voice above the ambient chatter and looked straight at me across the room. "You know," he said, dragging the words out like he was delivering the punchline of some joke. Asterisk, Andrew here's one lucky guy. Asterisk, he turned to Sarah, lifted his glass, and added with a slurred grin, Asterisk, I mean, come on, your wife? Way out of his league. Asterisk, the room fell into a quiet that felt like a hell breath. A few people chuckled nervously, as if unsure whether to laugh or look away. But Jason wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Still laughing to himself, he added, Asterisk, honestly, half the guys at the office want to take her home. Probably a few of the girls, too. Asterisk, there it was. The silence hardened. You could hear the soft ticking of ice melting in untouched glasses. Sarah stood still, her expression frozen in place, her face burning red. I looked around. No one said anything. Not her manager. Not her co-workers. Not the people who were supposed to have her back. They all just stood there, eyes darting, mouths closed. And Jason stood in the center of it all, swaying slightly, grinning like he was a king of some imaginary court. I stood up, not in a fury, not in haste. I rose slowly, quietly, and began walking toward him. Each step felt like it echoed. People moved aside instinctively, their bodies making space before their minds even caught up. Jason tilted his head, clearly not expecting a confrontation. That same smug look plastered across his face. I stopped right in front of him, just inches away, looked him straight in the eye. "Say that again," I said. My voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. The words landed like stone. Jason gave a lazy shrug, still smiling. Asterisk, relax, man. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Asterisk. And then I slapped him. An open-handed strike, clean and sharp. The sound cracked through the room like the snap of a branch in dead silence. His drink went flying. He stumbled backward, crashing into a side table, knocking over a decorative vase. Gasps rippled through the guests. Jason's cheek was already turning red, his eyes wide with shock. Before he could recover, I grabbed his arm, not roughly, just firmly, and walked him toward the front door. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. Asterisk, get out. Asterisk. He mumbled something, a pitiful attempt at saving face. But I didn't let him finish. Asterisk, out, before I stop treating you like a guest. Asterisk. He stepped into the night, without another word. I turned around. The room was still silent. Everyone watched me, stunned, but I wasn't looking for their reactions. I looked only at Sarah. She stared at me for a moment, her eyes wide, her expression unreadable. Then she walked over, reached out, and took my hand. Her grip was gentle but sure. "Thank you," she whispered. That night changed something, maybe everything. Over the next few days, Sarah received a flood of texts and emails, some from co-workers apologizing, others thanking me. Apparently, Jason's behavior wasn't a one-time slip. He'd been making crude remarks behind people's backs for months. But no one ever challenged him. No one ever stood up. Until that night, HR got involved. Jason was suspended. The truth about him came out fast and loud. He'd buried himself with his own arrogance. I didn't confront him to be a hero. I didn't raise my hand to make a point. I acted because silence, in moments like that, feels like betrayal, because there's a line. And when someone crosses it, pretending not to notice isn't strength. It's surrender. I stood up that night not just for Sarah, but for the respect we both deserved. And I've never once regretted it.